Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. We're really sorry we spent quite a significant amount of time, outside. We'll see what we can cover within the short period of time. Jules, come and give me this juice now. What kind of thing is this? It is how you do.
I've been rocking actually, which is why I didn't join earlier. This guy just trying to move from one place to another, so I just had to get a glass of juice to, step forward and step down.
It's cool. Okay. I think, like the organizers can prompt me, but given like the time that has been spent, I'll just assume we just, delve into the conversation. And then like if the other panelists, join in, they come to meet us, wherever we are. If that's fine, I don't know if any of the organizers can just say, yes, that's fine. But basically what we're meant to discuss today is about, from the topic, love does not win elections. And I feel in a way we sort of preempted ourselves. Like, how do we know that love does not even win elections? Because, like we know about the fact that a lot of things have been going on from the end test protest. There's been a lot of clamor that, let's have the youth, come into power. And obviously you get to, and I'm sure that okay, let me just even give a backdrop because I'm already turning this into a conversation. So everybody, this is Judith Ferami. Judith Ferami is the convener of the New Voice movement and the founder of Raising New Voices Initiative. He was formerly the National Youth Caucus leader of COAS Party, and then there he led about 7,000 youth. I'm like, Jude, how did you do this? Only you can do this, literally. But he led about 7,000 youth, if not more. And then he had like over 120 leaders across the country. He was managing them. And before he left, so that's what he was doing with COAS Party. And, recently, right, he was nominated for the Prize of Governance, the Future Award Prize of Governance, which is, phenomenal. Congratulations, Jude.
Thank you.
And I know, like, I see you doing, a lot of great work. These short sentences do not even explain, cannot even like fully encapsulate all the great things that you get to do. And then we're choosing you to talk about this topic, given you've been in the party system. If maybe you can update us, but you sort of understand how elections work. And why we're very much interested about this topic is because we're in a democracy, and within the democracy, it's expected that we have elections. So no matter how much we try to, clamor outside, we get a shout on social media, we can't avoid the fact that after 4 years, after 3 years in other African countries, we have to do elections. So it's like election is like it has sort of become like a major engine. So I want to know, rather than saying love does not win election, in your perspective, Jude, does love actually win election? Yeah.
Well, thank you very much again for that introduction. Really, really happy to have this conversation. First of all, what determines whether love wins elections is the political atmosphere in whatever democracy. Because I assume this is like an Africa-wide conversation. What would determine whether love wins elections are the factors that are at play in the political atmosphere for your country. In the US, for example, and let me just give let me apologize in advance for this philosophical background. To a very large extent, you find out that there are two kinds of societies in the world, and the categorization is dependent on what people defer to when it comes to decision making. So, for example, if I and Shona are leaders in the society, in a particular society, what will sway the people in this society, A, B, C, for example, will determine in making that kind of decision that we want to make. So, for example, let's say we want to build an hospital, right? What will determine whether the people support Shona, who is saying let's build an hospital, or JFK, who is saying let's build stadiums? what determines what sways the people then determines what kind of society it is. And I've said that to basically explain, to answer that question about whether love wins elections or not. And most of the times, two things sway the people. One is ideas, the other one is force. And that determines to a large extent what kind of society you live in. In China, and what we did in NSARS for the last 12 days, you can't do that in China. Some young people try that, and that's how we have the story of the Tiananmen Square, where the regime literally killed every single one of them. And in that kind of society, it is force that determines what sways the people towards the ideas that shape that society. Of course, there's a middle ground. In some instances, for most African countries, for example, you find out that in some instances they pander or they pretend as though this is a democratic society where ideas and superior arguments are what determines whether people support this idea and whether that idea is what eventually, or whether that decision is what eventually gets implemented, or in some other instances, the pretense is just, out of the blue, and then the regime or the administration resorts to force. In some other societies, you realize that it's simply ideas that determine how you are able to articulate your ideas, how you are able to sway the people with emotions or sentiment or oratory, and you see that in societies like the ancient Greek society, where the idea of democracy came from. And you also see that in some contemporary democracies. For example, you see a bit of that in the US. The US is shifting towards identity politics now, but it's still, to a very large extent, not tilted towards that force, or in a way, in Nigerian parlance, violence kind of way to determine who becomes the leaders or whatever the leaders do, or whether people are able to, protest, for example.
Yeah.
Now, this is like I said, permit me, I apologize for that extensive philosophical background. But whether love will win an election in your country is dependent on this analogy I just gave. Yeah, the public will grow to love somebody who can articulate his ideas, who is very, very oratorical, who can persuade the people, who can, paint pictures with words, right? Who can inspire the people. In a society where it is ideas that sway the decisions. And when people love you in that kind of scenario, then they vote for you. President Barack Obama is a very, very shining example of that kind of situation. In a country where it is, in my book, The Pragmatics of Real Change, I was trying to channel former Senator Patrick Obayagbo when he said that the kind of system of governance that we have in Nigeria is a kakakisto mob plutocracy. Those who are the least qualified, who can control the mob, and who have a lot of money. And that's the kind of democracy that we run, which is a situation where if you can't be violent, if you can't go out of the norms, the agreed norms, if you can't deploy thugs, then it's going to be very difficult for you to win an election in that kind of scenario. And that's why in some societies, when the people love you, you're likely to win an election. In some other societies, for example, in Nigeria, it's very, very difficult for you to have that happen. We still see a few actually there are manifestations of this, in the sense of, you look at Bankole Wellington, for example, when he ran for elections in 2019. And the number of votes, he didn't win, but he got a sizable number of votes, largely because the people like him. But this is about winning elections, not getting votes. So that gives you the kind of in any society, and particularly here in Nigeria.
Oh, great. Okay, so that was like quite elaborate, Jude. I have like some disagreement, and I want, people who, because I see that we have like a number of viewers here, and I want the viewers to actually comment on this because Jude had said it's either idea or thought. So, like for you as a person, like you joining us in this conversation, I want you to just use the chat. If you can just use the chat section, what persuades you, to vote, whoever, you get to vote for, or what do you think would be your, can we say we have election love languages? What is your election love language? Is the idea, is it force? And then I love the fact that Ma has joined us here. Hi, Ma. It's good to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Hi, Sona and Jody. Ferrani, if I pronounce your name well. Sorry, there was some technical issues. I actually am not familiar with Hopin, so sorry for joining late.
I mean, we're all in this together. Like, I also learned how to use Open today, and I'm sure maybe Jude is a bit familiar with Open, but it's fine. We're good. You're here with us. You're calling in from Gambia, I believe, or where?
Yes, I am calling from the Gambia, and I'm joining everyone from around the world from the Smiling Coast.
Oh, great. So just to give you a brief about Ma, Ma is an anti-corruption and good governance activist. It founded Gambia Participate, a civil society organization that works around strengthening good governance and corruption reduction through government and community engagement. Like you and Jude should really hook up after this because you guys have so much in common. And he also works as a budget and governance research expert with multiple international organizations. And then, before you joined the call, Ma, we're just discussing, we wanted to preempt ourselves because the topic was, does love win? Love does not win election. So we tried to, go back a bit to ask ourselves, does love actually win election? And then, Jude had sort of helped us to say that there are two things in his own opinion that win election, which is number one, idea or force. So I want you to sort of react to this, and I want you to react to this from the perspective of the fact that, okay, in terms of idea, when it comes to idea, I feel I sense, right, that you should have like a certain level of literacy, right, in your country if ideas will win election. So considering the fact that literacy rate in sub-Saharan Africa is like 65.5%, which means like quite a number of people within the region are still not literate. What, in your own opinion, do you think, like, what do you think wins election in Africa? Does love win election, or what exactly, wins election? And I see you, Bola. Thank you for using the chat. It says ideas over personality. Good stuff. Okay, so Ma, what's your opinion about this?
So now that's a very, I mean, it's an interesting question because it's like there's this conflict when it comes to either love wins elections or idea wins elections. Context. If you look at other countries, they vote based on ethnicity. I mean, someone else who belongs to their ethnicity, which is connected to love because of the love that they have for either their ethnicity or their religion. And then if you look at the other sex, they vote based on, I mean, the elites fraternity, they vote based on the capacity and the idea that the particular candidate has in making sure that they take the country from the predicament it is to a new level. So in Africa, I wouldn't say in Africa, in the Gambia, I would say love actually was making Yahya Jammeh to win elections a lot. I mean, from 1990.
This is interesting.
If I can put it this way, from 1996 when he came, from 1990 came through coup d'etat. I mean, the whole country, I mean, we're baffled. He came through coup d'etat without a blood being shed. And then in 2 years after, he decided to return the country to civilian, and then they vote into elections, and then he won the elections. In 1997, he brought a new constitution, and the constitution went through a referendum. People voted for that referendum. So from 2016, he has been winning elections, and all those is connected not because of his capacity, but because of the love that was connected to him. And remember, Yahya Jammeh is one of the worst African leader that has ever ruled this continent. I mean, 56 Africans died in his regime, excluding the Gambians. I mean, we had the case of Ghana where these 56 migrants were massacred mercilessly by his junglers. And then currently we have a 2 years commission called the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission that is actually looking into his violation of human rights in his 22 years of leadership. But if you wanted to make your comparative analysis and then understand why is it that people were voting for Yahya, maybe they were not privy to the information that are currently being revealed to us. Number two, maybe because of the love that they have for this president, the way he speaks, and I mean all that. But when it comes to capacity-wise and development, he is not the one that will take the country the way it's supposed to be. So going down to 2016, when the country realized that they are in a very, crazy situation, there was a coalition, and the coalition, there was a capacity that the people see in it, because it's a coalition of different experts, a coalition of sociologists, you have educationists in them, you have different experts that form a political party, a coalition political party, and they won the elections. So when the people realized that the love that they have for Yahya was not given back to them, so they decided to vote for a coalition that has the capacity. So in general, it depends on the country context. We've seen in other countries where a president is ruling for close to 2 decades to 3 decades. I mean, most of these elections, the results are questionable. I mean, we don't get to know if the results are credible or not. So that also, unless if we do a love poll for the political parties and a particular president, but really, in practice, it depends on the country context. But what is most important here is the love doesn't matter. What matters is the capacity, the idea that you are selling to the voters, the development that you are projecting for the electors to receive in a particular period of time during the contract that you have between them and that of the electorate. So really, for young people, I mean, it is not the love that you should look at when you wanted to vote for a particular candidate or a political party. Not look at the ethnic line that you are connected with them, and then also not the religious or any particular interest group that you are part of. That's because the reason why you are voting for them. But how is that particular candidate or political party is going to save the current predicament that you find yourself in? I mean, yeah. So those are some of the things that we need to question. I believe our generation, things are changing. I mean, in Nigeria, we have the not too young to run. When the young people believe that the elderly people were not doing enough in the House of Representatives, they come up with the not too young to run movement to say we need to amend the bill to allow young people to contest for election. And when this bill was, legislated, young people came, and then I believe it was about 400 young people that actually contested, and good number of them got voted in the Senate. So when young people rise up to say, we want a young person to represent our interests in the decision making, we don't want to just be consulted like the government will say, and then say we have consulted the young people or civil society organizations. We want young people to be part of the decision making table, where we review and then vet whether a particular policy is good for a country. Is it good for a particular, not a particular group, but is it representing the interests of young people or not? These are the areas where we can sit in the decision-making table and then decide for us, instead of government consulting us and then going back to their office to say we've consulted them, but the input that we have received is not feasible, and they go ahead with whatever they plan. So really, in practice, ideas will be the ones who, ideas, development, policies, that's what should be looked into, and the manifestos of the candidate and political parties, what should be looked into instead of love. Because love can be lost.
Wow, because love can be lost. That's really profound. Thank you so much, Ma. I think one of the things that stood out for me was how you brought in the context. Like presently in Gambia, we see that, the president is there because people love him, but that's not the way it should be. As young people, we shouldn't just do things because of love. We have to look for capacity, not just love. You can love everybody, but because you love everyone does not mean that you should, want them to lead, right? And then you brought in something very interesting, which is you spoke about the not too young to run bill. And obviously, and you brought us into, like, you've sort of preempted us, because I thought we're going to take this question later. But I just want to, dwell a bit on the not too young to run, having young people in positions of authority, or having young people, win elections. And then for that, Jude, given the context of Nigeria, when people, because a lot of people, given the NTES protest, I'm sure Ma must have seen a lot of it, the NTES movement. We saw a lot of clamor on social media, people saying that, let's form another youth party, let's have a youth run for election. And then, you go back to look at history, and I'm sure, like, I know the exact age that, the president of the Gambia got into power, but it was not old when he got into power. It was not this old. It was, quite not this age. And then, in Nigeria, we've had young leaders, even during the military regime. I mean, Yakubu Gowon became the head of state at the age of about 32. People even argue that it's even like at the age of 30. We had Murtala Mohammed become, head of state at 37, Obasanjo at 39, even Buhari at 41, and even Agui Ironsi at 42. These are past head of state. So really, I want to know from you, Jude, is the solution really about having a young person run for election? Is that really the solution that we need? Jude?
Right. Thank you very much. First of all, one of the problems, and I think we need to make this clear, one of the problems that we have is that it seems that the young people have been there, they're not doing any better, and they're still there right now. So it's, and I agree to a reasonable extent that, not even to a reasonable extent, I agree to a large extent that competence is a much more important criteria for development of our continent. Having a young person there. But having said this, I think it's also important to state in very, very clear terms that the problem with the age argument is that these young people who have been there have refused to leave. They were there when they were young. See what we were talking about last time about the way that elections go in Nigeria. If you've been elected and or you are in office and the people do not get the kind of dividends or rewards for electing you into power in terms of like reasonable development indices, improvement in the standard of living, education, human capital development. If people don't get that, they should be able to vote you out. I'm putting another person in there that will then go ahead and say, this is what the people really want, and I will deliver it. So it's how should I put it down? It's a very, very dialectic argument in the sense that if you had young people there, even up to now, if we have young people go into office right now and those young people do not perform, it doesn't mean we should then say, let's go and bring old people, right? What we should do is remove those young people who are in office and then put in other people there. It is in the efficiency of that system of being able to elect and reject candidates and public servants that you are now able to have a system where the real conversation about why young people should be in power will make sense. And why should young people be in office? Because we are in an evolving, the last 20 years evolved in so like the kind of development that we've had all over the world between 2020, between the year 2000 and 2020, right, is the kind of like that the rate of that development will be compared, and I don't have the figures for this, I'm just extrapolating, right? But that rate of development could only be compared to the rate of development in Nigeria between let's say 1950s and the year 2000, right? And the rate of development between 1950s and the year 2000 is literally like a century back from that year, literally like say 1850 to 1950. You get? Now, this rate of development means that if you are not, the ideas are changing constantly, right? The demands from the people, in fact, are changing constantly. And you need a young person who is very conversant with these ideas, right? Who is able to evolve with the times, who, much more importantly, has a stake in the future, right? And that future is not what we have today. Next 20 years from now, it's going to be radically different from the last 20 years. And if I'm a young person and I'm in office, right, I have a stake in that future.
Yeah.
Because I will still, like, give or take, I will still be alive 20 years from now, God willing, right? But a 70-year-old man, an 80-year-old man, does not have a stake in that future. So that's the conversation around young people getting into office.
So Jude, are you trying to say, sorry to jump in, are you trying to say that when you're younger and in office, you're more deliberate about the decision that you make as opposed to when you're older? So are you trying to say, for example,
okay,
one entering into power, he was more passionate about and more deliberate about the decision than now when he's older? Is that what you're trying to say?
That's what I'm trying to say, but there's a condition attached to it. The condition is if you are competent. We started from the conversation around competent people getting into office, and if you are incompetent, we should be able to reject you, right?
Okay.
That kind of, if that condition is satisfied, right, and then you get somebody into office, and you are able to either reject that person or elect or re-elect that person based on their performance, right? The ones who come out as the competent persons, the competent candidates. If you pick a competent old candidate and a competent young candidate with these conditions satisfied, you will find out that the young guy who is competent has more stake in the future, right? The competent old guy will do so much, right, but not as much and not as involved in the process of development like the old guy. For a young person, for example, your friends can call you. I mean, in the next look at Yakub, look at General Yakubu Gowon, right? And this is a very controversial issue, which is happening right now in Nigeria, right? I mean, he's still alive and still answering in court for the decisions that he made as a young head of state. Now, in a kind of society where you have a much younger population of young people in office, you find out that we have colleagues who can call JFK and say, JFK, what you're doing is stupid, or what you're doing doesn't make sense. But if it's an older guy, I mean, in the next 20 years, it's probably dead.
Okay.
And I'm sure I've complicated issues for you guys in this conversation, but let me summarize this, right? Which is what I've been trying to learn how to do. One, we have to satisfy the condition of democratic election, the ability, which is why a lot of the fights and a lot of the work that we're doing personally for me and my organization is electoral reforms. We have to be able to satisfy that condition of we can elect, re-elect, or reject candidates who get into office, whether they are young or whether they are old. That is a competence-based condition. You understand that?
Yeah.
So if people get in the office, they should be competent enough to deliver development for the people, whether you are young or old. Once that situation has been satisfied, we then have a situation whereby we should favor more young people, right, getting into office, because we have a situation where the world is evolving. It's a technological future. You need people who are able to, have a stake in that future, be able to, get a hold of the recent happenings and how things are evolving, and be able to adapt, right? And that's the argument I'm trying to make.
Okay, all right then. Thank you so much, Jude. One of the profound things that you said is, ensuring that we emphasize competence, right? I think like that's one, very profound thing. And then ensuring that we can not only elect, we can also re-elect and we can also reject. And then that brings me to Mar. Mar, do you think it's high time we consider this whole electioneering system, because now it's more like we the electorate were in a fix. It's a social contract, as they would say. Once we elect, can everyone still hear me? Okay, yeah. Can you hear me, Ma? Because it was frozen for a bit. Ma, can you hear me? Okay, you can hear me. Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah, yeah, me. Thank you for joining. I think my speakers just got frozen. Yeah. Okay, great. I mean, like, please use the comment section. We want to hear your opinion. You know, you're also part of the panelists, you know, so we want to hear your thoughts about, you know, electioneering and, you know, how we can make things better. We want to know your argument. We want to know your perspective as to, you know, the whole election process. Okay, Ma, you're back. Okay, so Ma, you back? Ma? Okay. Ma, you might just want to refresh if you can hear me. Just refresh. Okay, Ma, I think are you back? Okay, no. Okay, Ma, you can just refresh. In the meantime, I mean, those like who can hear me, we want to know your perspective. Should we begin to reconsider our process of you know, electioneering? And Jude, if you're here before Ma comes in, you can also answer. Do you think the system of having 4 years in office is that too long? You know, don't you think we're shooting ourselves in the leg by saying that, oh, you will lead me for 4 years? Do you think we should begin to consider the process of, you know, choosing our leaders? And this is particularly important given the fact that between 1957 to 2018, Africa spent billions of dollars, you know, on election. It's so expensive to run for election. We've had about 220 presidential election, 370 parliamentary election, about 130, you know, referendum, and this costs a lot of money. An average election costs about $220 million, and this is all still borrowing money. So should we begin, you know, to reconsider? Do we really even need an election? Should we begin to reconsider the election process? And bearing in mind that the more election you do, the more money you're spending. So how do you think we can? It's like a dilemma. How do we, you know, navigate ourselves? And I want to hear from other people too via the comment section. Thank you, Jude.
Honestly, I think that that's a very, very, it's a bitter pill that we have to swallow. And the reason is because our societies are mostly democracies that have not evolved. Look at the United States, for example, right? The United States of America has, they have midterm elections, and then they have general elections. So elections are happening like every 2 years in the United States of America. And for a democratic society, this is one of the, like I said, the bitter pills that we have to swallow when it comes to, I mean, the expense of the electoral process. And the reason is simple. If people, you know, even how should I put it now? Look at Singapore. Singapore under former Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew, right, was a system where it was authoritarian, it was democratic, but it was prime minister for years. And I mean, they've built for themselves a reasonable country. But how many other examples of that do we see in all over the world? You have to be able to effect a system where quality people are able to get into leadership positions, political leadership positions. But because we're not sure that these people will, you know, be the kinds of people that we think they are, especially when they are trusted with power. You know, the power of the state is so immense in any society. So if we're unlucky that this person is not the way we think he should be, we should be able to, after a couple of years, say let's go again. And if the person is justifiably good enough, then we can re-elect the person. And again, you know, look at, again, I make an example of the United States of America. Anybody would have said, well, President Barack Obama was doing reasonably well with the United States of America, so he should have been able to, you know, get it right. But first things first, you're likely to find out that about half of the people who are going to vote in that election will disagree, right? And apart from the fact that they disagree, you also need a society whereby you are not a society of quality thinking people, people who say this is the kind of decisions that we're making, and we're making the decisions based on the fact that we agree, right, that this is the way to go, instead of putting all that power and responsibility on one person. And say, well, you are the best guy. We've never seen a president like you. So therefore, you should continue to try. Like, you're basically just saying that there are no other quality people in this society who can take these decisions in the way that you have taken them. So these are my own thoughts about it.
Yeah, I would like to. Yeah, I'd like to hear from Ma. Ma, are you back? I think we're pressed for time. We have like 3 more minutes. But Ma, do you want to jump in? I don't know if you got the context of what we're talking about, but we're just talking about, elections. Should we begin? Is it really good that we put ourselves in the social contract of having to wait for 4 years before, choosing a new leader? And, Okpeyemi, one of our panelists, one of our, audience, is saying that I don't think it's the timing in office. It's the system of accountability, which is in line with what Jude is saying as well. The system of accountability that is the issue. So Ma, what's your perspective about this in like 1 minute, because we're sort of pressed for time, and I want to see if we can take one more question.
I think electioning process, as I mentioned earlier, is a period to renew or build new contract with a particular candidate or a party. So it depends on the ideas that the particular party has to come up with. If you are someone else that promised for something else in the past 5 years, like we see in the United States, everyone, Donald Trump thought he was going to be re-elected because of the massive love that he got from some of his, not only Republicans, but those that side with him. But at the end of the day, people believe the promise that he made before, that he said promise made, promise kept, that was not really the case, because most of those promises actually affected those who actually supported him. So I believe in the context of Africa, if I can put it that way, I believe the issue is not always the promise. In the Gambia, for example, we had a lot of promises that was made by the coalition, and within 3 years, those promises were trusted, and then the president started, pursuing his own interest. So this is one of the things that we keep advocating and sensitizing people about. Election is a period. You make a contract between you as an electorate and a particular candidate. So the contract is for 5 years to represent your interests at the highest office of the land. Within that 5 years, you need to evaluate and then check if your interest is being well represented in that particular government. That's the reason why you also have a House of Representatives, and that particular House of Representatives and then the president needs to work together and then agree and disagree to ideas only to satisfy those that put them into office. So within those periods of 5 years, if you see the ones that you've elected not representing your ideas, now you have to revisit your interest, like the United States has done. When they see the things and the flow that Donald Trump was taking, they were not happy with it. A majority that voted for him they end up voting to Joe Biden. Some of the strongholds in the United States, the stronghold for Republicans, turned out to be voting to Biden. So that's because they evaluated the period that he has that he has served in his office, and they realized that most of his policies, most of his actions were not representing the interests of the people. In fact, it was inflicting the rights of the people, and that's the reason why they decided to end that contract. So I believe that that's also another system of accountability, holding leaders accountable for promises and policies that are not representing the interests of the electorate. So elections also not only a democratic process to get in someone else, but also to hold someone else accountable.
Great. I'm glad. Thank you so much for that important point. Strengthening the fact about accountability and also delving into the purpose of other arms of government, for example, the legislative. That's why we need them to be working. Finally, just to wrap up this conversation, we're 1 minute behind time, but I just want to know your perspective, because media age is a digital age. We see a lot of conversation going on the social media. And then still we have like a lot of influencers who have, followers in millions. How do we translate those conversations on social media? How do we cascade them down to the people? Because the truth is that the numbers in the social media and not enough to win elections at the moment. I understand that in the Gambia, internet penetration is still about 20% thereabouts, and we still have like 80% of the people not on the internet. In Nigeria, we have about 28% of the population like have access to internet, and not even everybody that have access to internet have access to social media. So how do we, and then we understand that there is an energy on social media. How do we translate that energy, in 1 minute, Jude and Mark, how do we translate that energy, to the grassroots? And I'm asking because both of you are big on the grassroots. So how do we cascade that energy down in 1 minute with your final thoughts? Thank you. Jude can go, and then we have Mark.
I don't know.
Thanks for being sincere. I mean, other
honestly,
people can comment. We want to hear your
yes,
thoughts.
I'll be glad to hear people's thoughts. But NSAS really, the NSAS protest really gave me a reset. When when you were young, our father knocked your head and then it just resets your brain. That's what NSAS did to me, because it just showed me that social media was very, very instrumental for NSAS, right? The same social media was very, very instrumental for President Buhari's change mantra. But I'm starting to think that maybe we don't create the buzz. Maybe we can't use social media to create the buzz. Maybe the buzz needs to be created, and then social media will help amplify it. That's the position where I am right now.
Oh, wow.
But to get social media to create that buzz, I honestly don't know. My last words would be the future of our continent, Africa, really depends on our generation and what we do. We have the tools to. Mari is in Gambia, Shona, you're in different part of Nigeria, and we're organizing. A lot of people are joining as well. I hope that we're able to use these tools to organize ourselves in a way that when we are much, much older, we'll look back at what we've done and we'll say, yes, like our generation really, really moved the needle forward when it comes to development in Africa. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for being sincere, Fermi. Mark, the same question. What's your thought on this?
So I believe social media is instrumental in channeling actions in grassroots community, because once the conversation starts on social media, it can be picked up by activists and other rights advocates to channel this conversation to grassroots and then inform them about what is actually happening. But what African governments are very smart of doing, they're very good at burying the bad news. So if there's something that is trending on social media, they will be quiet, and within a space, for Gambia, I made my analysis in 2 weeks. That particular conversation will die off, and the government will come up with a new, let's say, a development or a project, and they put it out, and then you see young people going back, praising the government, forgetting what they have been discussing the last 2 weeks. So, and if you also look at the analysis in the Gambia, the good number of voters are those in rural communities. And they are the one that decides, if you like, they are the one that decides who wins elections. So as a result, the conversation that is limited on social media, once you're talking about government accountability or the likes, if you channel it, we have a program called Know Your Budget, where we talk about government misappropriation, government allocation. 90% in 2020, 90% of the communities that we visited told us that they never heard about the budget. And what we have done is to bring their representative, their house representative, and then get that conversation going with them. And once you empower them with that particular information, you will see the accountability that is coming from the people holding their National Assembly or House representative accountable during that particular session. The accountability comes after they were empowered with the information. Hadn't been the information was not there, they wouldn't know how to hold them accountable. So the energy on social media should be channeled down to communities, because as you rightly said, the number of people that have access to internet is limited in the Gambia. So majority, 70 to 80% of the Gambian population don't have access to the internet. So, and those are the people that matter the most. So channeling the information down is going to be the duty of us. And that's where the government have an edge over us, the activists, because government always go to the grassroots and then give people information. And the information that they are giving to the people is information that they're interested in making the people know, not what the people wanted to know. So for us, the activists, we need to make sure that we collect credible information and feed it to the people so that the people can make sound judgment.
Okay, all right then. Thank you so much. I had a swell time today. I learned a lot from Jude and Mara, and also from our, supportive audience. It was really good having everyone here. One of the key takeaway is number one, we need competent people, people with capacity. We need quality people. This is one thing that Jude emphasized on ensuring that we have quality people. And then, Mara, you had mentioned about we taking the fact that we can renew our contract with these people, and we should ensure that all the system of government is working so that we can hold them into account. And one of the conclusion, in as much as we are the social media generation, one key conclusion that we had is that in as much as we make noise, we create those trends, we generate traction online, we have not anybody else, I, Jude, every one of us, we have the responsibility of cascading that information to the grassroots. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the Diversity Summit, and especially this session on Love Does Not Win Election. Thank you. There are other sessions going on. You can follow us at CFA Africa, and reach out to Jude, Farami, and Manyang on social media. Thank you so much, Jude, and thank you so much, Ma. Do have a great day. Hope to catch up with you very soon. And Jude, I'm coming for my juice. I'm coming for my juice.
No problem.
All right, then.
Bye,
Thank you
guys.
so much.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.